Hello. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to us all, depending on our time zones. Good day to all those who will be watching the replay later on. I'm so glad to be here with you all today, and I hope we are going to have an exciting time full of learning. So, my name is Deborah Oforidate, and I am with the Institute of ICT Professionals Ghana as a digital skills training supervisor. So, I'll be introducing myself more as we go on. But now I'm going to share my presentation screen. Okay, so we are the Institute. Okay, I can see we are having people saying hello in the chat. Hello to you all. Nice to see you all here. Hello to us all. So, as we continue joining, let me briefly introduce who we are. So, we are the Institute of ICT Professionals Ghana. We are a professional body and we have been in existence since the year 2017. Yes, in February, we had our anniversary. And what do we do? So we empower our members through our professional development programs. We also give them opportunities to network, opportunities to share their ideas and their knowledge through article publications in what we call the Business and Financial Times here in Ghana. And they have so many other opportunities to showcase their work. So, as I mentioned, we are a professional body, which means that we have members as part of our umbrella body, comprising of individuals, comprising of companies, educational institutions, both in the private and public sector. Aside all the things that we do, one of our main initiatives is the Coding Education for Ghana initiative. And through that initiative, we plan to introduce computer programming to children 6 years and above. Yes, we really believe in the early start model. So, and we believe that children, as young as they are, have a very um, active mind, they have a very active imagination, and it needs to be nurtured. So, right from the word go, right from when they are children, we begin introducing them to digital skills. And one of the things we do is computer programming, or what we call coding. And because they are children, because they love to have fun, because they love to interact with things that are colorful and interactive, we use a platform called Scratch. And that's why we are here today. And our Coding Education for Ghana initiative is in different models. So we have the weekend coding sessions, which are usually organized on Saturdays and Sundays and usually done virtually. And then we have our coding in schools, where we form partnerships with some schools in the country. And then during their extracurricular activities, we go and engage the children in coding. And then we have one of our flagship programs called the Coding Caravan, where we go from community to community, engaging children in unserved and underserved communities in a full day session of coding. So they would otherwise not have been able to pay or afford the tuition fees. And with the help of our wonderful sponsors, we are able to provide these sessions for them completely free of charge. And then we also have our special coding sessions, of course, which are usually organized during vacations. So to engage the children who would have finished writing their what we call the BEC at after they've completed grade 9, and then those who have completed their secondary schools after they have completed grade 12. Yes, so those are our special coding sessions. Okay. And that's about the institute. So, as I already mentioned, we are a professional body. We've been in existence since 2017. And yeah, Now, I'll just want to show you a few pictures of some of our sessions. And the very recent one that we had was with special school called the Mampong School of the Deaf. So there are students who are hard of hearing and mute. And so it was a really, really interesting session. That was our first time having a major interaction with students with special needs, specifically students who have difficulty in hearing and speaking. And I can tell you the experience was marvelous. I really enjoyed myself, and it was full of surprises, because one of the things that we usually have this misconception that because they are not able to talk and speak like us, excuse me to say, they are not able to easily understand concepts that we would usually understand. But how wrong can we be? They were able to understand it quickly, and I dare say that they were even able to understand quicker than children who can speak and hear. And I can attribute it to the fact that maybe their senses are heightened, but the road ahead is full of learning, and I am ready for that. So, who am I? Who is Deborah? Deborah Oforidate. I am a passionate educator of a little over 5 years. I have been doing this since the year 2020. And I love engaging K-12 children in digital skills. And I have worked since the year 2020. I've worked with over 1,000 children. And it has been online, it has been in person, both in office, both out of office, in engaging in traveling, working with children from all walks of life and different ages in the K-12 environment. And I want to talk a little about my story. So I had my first degree in Bachelor's of Arts in Economics and Information Studies. But then I transitioned to technology education in the year 2020. That was my first time hearing about coding and my first time interacting with children. And I enjoyed myself so much. I just told myself, this is where I'm supposed to be. Okay, so that's just a little intro about me. You can also put your names, where you're connecting from, what you do in the chat, and I'll be happy to read all of them. So the purpose of our session today, we have an hour that will be ending. We have about 40 minutes more, or a little bit more. So we are going to have a very interactive session. First, I'm going to take you through some introductions of our topic, and then I switch to my Scratch screen, the Scratch project. And when we go there, we are going to see how the project works, and then we will do a bit of a live demo. And then I share the link to the project with you, and you'll be free to remix it later on. So, why this topic? I already mentioned that we had a major interaction with students with special needs. Though we have been having a few interactions with them in our past programs, it hasn't been on a large scale as we did recently. And we realized that they are not to be left out. The fact that they are special children doesn't mean that they cannot learn these things that we are also learning. The fact that they are special children doesn't mean that they are not able to understand. It doesn't mean that they are not able to imagine. In fact, they are even able to imagine more than we could ever do. So it's became very important that how the question was, how can we um incorporate Scratch into one of their day-to-day living, right? And one aspect was communication, which is very, very important. Communication helps us to convey our ideas, our feelings, helps us to even connect with one another. And Scratch is a perfect tool for connecting with one another. So we decided to do it two-pronged. So one, they'll be learning how to use the Scratch platform, and then two, they'll be improving upon their communication skills along the way. So that's our main reason for choosing this particular topic. So how I'm helping autistic children communicate with Scratch. And then So after the session, one, you should be able to explore strategies for making Scratch projects accessible to autistic children. That's the first objective. And then we should learn to create choice-based interactions, emotion expressing games, and personalized visual supports. And then by the end of the session, there will be a working prototype that can be adapted for your learners. So as I mentioned earlier, I'll be sharing a link to the project with you so you can always go back and then remix it. Okay, so it is time for us to open our Scratch interface, for us to first look at the demo project, and then for us to play around with it a bit. So I am switching to my Scratch screen. Now, the first thing I am going to do is to play the project for all of us to see. So I click on my green flag, and then the title comes in, wiggling a bit. Don't we all like some form of interactivity? Okay, and then we have our instructions button and then our start button. So we click on instructions first to see how we are going to play this. So click on the instruction button to begin, and then we click on start. So mhm. Now, this fairy is acting as the educator, the parent, or the guide who is with the students. So, this is a demo project. The question asked here is a placeholder. Of course, you are free to ask any question at all, depending on your specific situation or context. So, the first question, the child has come back from break, the child has come back from school, from a play date, or from anywhere apart from with the educator, and to catch up or to find out what was happening whilst they were away, they asked them what happened today. So for now, there are three options they can choose from, and this was developed from the idea of AACs, which are usually different modes of communication, alternative ways of communication. And one of them was to use these cards with pictures and text on it to help the child easily communicate their ideas or easily communicate whatever they want to say. So we've brought it into Scratch, and here they can select by clicking on any of these pictures. So let's say I made a new friend. So I click on I made a new friend. Yeah. So there's a follow-up question, and then there are follow-up answers that they can choose from. I felt happy, I felt sad, I neither felt happy nor sad, I was indifferent, I felt angry. So let's say I felt happy. Of course, I made a new friend. So I felt happy. Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is the educator giving a final, like a lesson here, right? Let's try another option. So I click on my green flag again, and this time, since I have already seen the instructions, I'm going right into the project. So start. So now I'm going to choose a different option. Let's say someone broke my toy. Okay, someone broke my toy. Mm-hmm. If someone breaks my toy, I'm not going to be happy about it. So, am I going to feel sad, or am I going to feel indifferent, or am I going to feel angry? So, I think I'll take an option from the comments. Which one do you think we should take? Are we going to feel sad? Are we going to feel happy, angry, or indifferent? Or maybe you're going to feel happy here. Any comments, any options in the comments or ideas, or what would you have chosen if someone broke your toy? We could say that I felt sad. Oh, I felt sad. So I felt sad. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good advice that we should all take. So basically, that's how the project is going to play out. Now, the process we went through. So the first was the idea. We were thinking about how do we combine scratch and then communication with autistic children, and this idea came up. But then to make sure that the idea really worked or was really useful to the target audience, we actually engaged some organizations here that are um, that work with autistic children, that have the experience, they know the nuances, they gave their ideas, they gave their feedback, and then that helped in improving upon the project. Now, we've not been able to apply all the feedback that we received because this is a working project, this is a prototype, this is something we can iterate on, and we actually encourage improving and improving always, right? So we hope that after the session we continue to improve upon it. And one of the suggestions that came with was adding options so that the educator can put in their custom questions or the students can put in their custom answers. So that's something we are still brainstorming. Who knows, you could have an idea on how to do this, and we would love to see how you go about this. But this is the beginner project, and this is how it's going. So let's go into, we are going to open a new Scratch interface. We are going to see how we create some of the sprites. Of course, you can see that not all the sprites are from scratch. In fact, it's only just the fairy, it's just the fairy that was added from scratch. And then the buttons were also added, but then they were edited. So we could work on that for some time. And then the slides also have the processes that you go through. It provides a great resource. It's a great resource for you to go through step by step to be able to create this project yourself and even be able to improve upon it. So I'm going to open a new Scratch interface, um, a new one. Yep. Now we do not need a cut here. So the first thing we do is to add the sprite. First, we delete the sprite. Okay, we delete the sprite. So let's delete our sprite. Um, Let me check the charts. Okay, very sad. Yeah, I see people. Amanda mentioned very sad. Of course, you are going to feel very sad if someone broke our toy. So, let's open our Scratch interface. Here we'll go a bit slowly so we are all able to catch up. And then we delete our cat sprites and we are free to add any sprite at all, right? This is about imagination. So imagine what sprite you would want to use for your project. So let's go right in, add any sprite of our choice. So I come here to choose a sprite. Now in the previous project, the project I just showed you, I used one sprite, the fairy. So I think I'm going to choose another sprite here. Yeah, to just for experience sake. Let's put it that way. Who is going to be our educator? Pico or Pecha or Princess? I think I'll go with Princess. Or let's see, what Snowman? I think I'll go with Snowman. Snowman will be a very interesting choice here. imagine interacting with a snowman. Yeah, so we add a snowman. And then for the backdrop, I actually created it myself. Instead of using the backdrops that have been provided by Scratch, I just decided to play around with the colors. So we could do that. So we come to choose a backdrop, but do not click on it. And then you come to paint. So this is how to create your own backdrop. Now, here you are completely free to create your own backdrop. So we can use about 5 minutes to quickly create a nice backdrop of our choice. So let's see what we have here. I think I'm going to play around with the shapes. So I'll just add, I usually just add a big rectangle on the screen. Okay, so let's see what we are going to have here. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to add a circle in the middle, which will be a different color. Of course, I can always come back and then change the colors. And to get a perfect circle, I hold down my shift button on my keyboard and then sorry, I hold down my shift and then draw. Okay. I hold down my shift and then draw. Okay. Now I'm going to change the color of my circle. Should we maintain it this way or make it multicolored? Okay. In fact, using the snowman reminds me of a song. I don't know whether I heard it from a cartoon or I heard it from, I think, an animation. Do you want to build a snowman? Yes. Okay, let's see how this is going. I want it to be at level with my rectangle. So like right on the edge, both at the bottom and at the top. Okay, this is looking good. Let me bring it to the right a little. This is looking good for me, at least. And then I'm going to take off the outline. So we have 5 minutes to build our backdrop. Okay, outline taken out. Let's see what we are getting here. Hmm. All right, so this will be my backdrop. Simple and nice. Simple and nice. Yeah. Oh, yes. Frozen. Frozen. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Oh, he looks like Olaf, right? Frozen. Frozen. Oh, Jamie, right? You've started talking to the pictures on the wall. Well, that's interesting. It's so interesting being able to feel like children once again. Okay, so we have our backdrop ready. Now, what I did in the project was to duplicate this backdrop, and then I created a rectangle on it, and then created my instructions. We could do that. So, first, before that, we rename the backdrop to intro backdrop. Best practices in coding. You make sure you give your sprites, your backdrops, broadcast messages, whatever you have to give a name, make sure the name communicates. Yes, it's very, very important. So that several years later, when you come and look at the project again, or when someone else takes your projects, they are able to easily know that, oh, you are using this sprite for this particular purpose, or using this backdrop for this particular purpose. Whatever purpose you are using it for, make sure the name is concisely communicating that. Yes, so intro backdrop, because this is going to be the first backdrop that shows at the beginning. I just had an idea. Why not make it like snowman standing and then the sunset showing? So if this is going to be like the sunset, then it's going to be like yellowish, right? So I'm going to use the two-toned backdrop and I'm going to try and recreate a sunset. Yeah, so yellow and then red, I think. Yes. In fact, I'm really enjoying this. And we have a sunset looking backdrop. Okay, so intro backdrop, and then we duplicate for our instructions. So for the instructions, you can go ahead and then use the text tool to type in a color that will be very visible, or you can have a backdrop for the text. So I prefer to have a backdrop for the text. So I'm going to use a dark background for a light colored text. Yes, and a plain background at that, a plain background. So let's see, so that we do not have too many colors. Well, we could go with anyone, a dark colored background. So yeah, and then I come and draw this here. uh, Let it go up a bit, and then I use my text tool, and the text must be light colored, yeah, so that the text pops. Let's see how white looks like. um Instructions. Okay, I think white is good. Instructions. Yeah, you can position it, and then you could underline it if you want. That's a choice. Our instruction is just one for this particular project, so we are going to increase the height of this a bit, drag this up, and then we use our text to one, click on the green flag. I would adjust this to start the conversation. And I am a big fan of adapting this to your particular situation. So we may be doing this, we may be typing this particular text, we may be asking a particular question, but I actually encourage you to adapt it to your particular situation. And I love to play around with the fonts. I realize that the children love this a lot, the students love this a lot. So handwriting or marker, I think handwriting will go. Yeah, handwriting looks perfect. It looks perfect. I'm loving this so far. How many of us are on track, ready to go? And to put the icing on the cake, or to wrap everything together, you can group it so you do not mistakenly drag something away. So let's group everything by using the select tool and clicking and dragging over everything, and then group. Yeah. So use your select tool. Make sure your mouse is starting from a point where it's not touching any part of your backdrop. So an empty space. Okay, you could use the top and then click and drag over the whole thing. And then you see group on top here. You click and then group. How are we doing so far? Exactly, Amanda. Naming your sprites and backdrops and broadcast messages is something you need to focus on. We all need to focus on, right? Oh, thank you. Adalto, I hope I'm mentioning your name right. Thank you for the link to Frozen, the Frozen song. That particular line has really stuck in my mind. Do you want to build a snowman? Interestingly, I do not even know the rest of the words, but I'm definitely going to learn it. Yes, yes, Jamie. It's good to give meaningful names, giving a good programming practice to our kids. Okay, I'm really loving the vibes that we are having here. So remember, as we all learned not long ago, you rename your backdrop, right? So this is the instructions backdrop. So instructions. Yep, instructions. Instructions. Okay. And since we aren't going to use the backdrop one, we can delete it. One other thing I would like us to note, be as lean as possible. So if there are extra sprites, extra backdrop, extra codes that are not in use, it's advisable to take them out of your project, because the more the codes, the more the the images, the more the sprites and backdrops that are in your project, the slower your project takes to load. So that's one thing we would also want to note. So since we are, it may look like just one backdrop. What difference will it make? But imagine one backdrop, another sprite here, another code line here and there, and then your project is too big to load fast, and we go and check and find out that most of the things are not needed. So you should be tidying up as you are going along, and then when you are done with your whole project, you go through and make sure there are no assets. Let me call all of them assets lying around, not doing anything, right? Okay, so we have our sprites, we have our backdrops. Okay, it's been awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. So we have our sprites, we have our backdrop. Now, this is about communication, right? So let's add our buttons, or do we? Let's add our buttons. Let's add our buttons and edit them. So we need a button to go into our instructions. We need a button to start the conversation. So we need two buttons here. So choose a sprite, and then we come and add our buttons. And like we have six options here. And you are free to choose, okay, except the home button because home is like going home or going to the beginning of your project, which has a lot of the options available for you in the project. But this is about going into the instructions. So maybe we could go with button one, button two, or button three. And then we could use the button four to start, okay, like the tick sign showing that we are starting. We are completely free to play around with any of them. So I am going to go with the button three for my instructions and button four for my start. So button three for instructions, and then I go back and add button four for start. Mm-hmm. Button three for instructions, and then quickly, I don't even want to forget this. I go and rename it. So instructions, and then starts. And then another thing, you could add the letters BTN at the end of your button sprite. So start BTN, that's the short form of button, or instructions BTN, the short form of button. So we could do that. Start BTN, instructions BTN. Now we come and position it nicely. Where do we want them to show when it starts? So let's position them. Okay. Now when we play the project, we realize that when we click on the green flag, the first thing to show is our instructions button. So we go onto the stage. Now this particular code we are going to add on the stage. One So assuming we have some educators here who have not used Scratch before, or who aren't good with this, I am actually going to go step by step. So on the stage, we on the stage, we go and click on stage. We go and click on stage, and then we bring the code. We bring the code when green flag clicked. When green flag clicked. So when we click on the green flag, we want the backdrop to switch to the intro backdrop. Okay. So when we click on the green flag, we want our backdrop. We want our backdrop to switch to intro backdrop. So we come to looks. So we went to events. We went to events for the when green flag clicked, and then we go to looks for the switch backdrop to. So we go to switch backdrop to intro backdrop. Now, this is when renaming your backdrop becomes very important, right? How would you have known which one is intro backdrop? Imagine you are having so many backdrops and you haven't renamed your backdrop. You would have to go back and go and check which number backdrop, or what is the name of the backdrop for intro. So we want to make sure that wherever we've gotten to in the project, as soon as we click on the green flag, it comes right back to the intro backdrop. And then we had this text coming in at the beginning. So we could go and create that. We actually created that as a sprite. So again, paint as a sprite. Remember, not as a backdrop, because we want to be able to animate it. So as a sprite, and that was pretty simple. We just used the text tool, and then we typed the title. So let's say communication time. And one other idea I just got, you could actually record your voice and say, communication time, yay! And then you add it at the point where the title comes in animating. That would be a nice twist to the project. So communication time, okay. And then let me increase this a bit. I could decide to change the look. The handwriting it doesn't really pop for the title. So I'm going to make a communication time, and then we clip it right into the middle here. We can always come and reposition it on the stage, but then on the canvas, make sure you've popped it right in the middle here. So communication time, we can rename this to title text, And then as a sprite, also title text. Okay. A little check-in. I hope we are all on track. Okay. And then we can change the color. Since looking at the backdrop, I'm going to make the color like white or something that can easily be seen. Or, yeah, great. I didn't select this first. Mm-hmm. Make it darker. Okay. I think I'll just go with the red. Yes. So now we come to code, and then we bring, so here you have options. You can either use, you can either let it hide when the green flag is clicked and then show when the backdrop switches to the intro backdrop, or you can just go ahead and then say that when backdrop switches to intro backdrop, show, and then it glides in. Or you could say when green flag click, show, and then it glides in, so that it shows at the same time as the intro backdrop is showing. I think we could go with the latter. So on the title text, remember on the title text, when green flag click, now we want to position it, right? We want to position it. And Scratch makes positioning, direction, and positioning, direction so easy. You just need to drag your sprite, especially with positioning, you just need to drag your sprite to where you want it to be, and Scratch will put in the codes for you in the motion blocks. How cool is that? So right now, when we go to motion and we look at the go to blocks, we see the numbers in the right. Just keep your eye there and then drag your title again. You see that the numbers change. You see that the numbers change. Okay, the numbers have changed. Yeah, so I'm going to drag it like at the top corner, so it will just glide in. So the top corner is where it will start from, right? The top corner here is where it will start from. So when green flag clicked, I want it to go to the top corner where I have dragged it to. So first I dragged it in there, and then before I go and bring my go to XY, Scratch does that work for me. Now, after going there, when the green flag is clicked, to be able to see it like there before it's gliding, we just give it to wait a few seconds, like a fraction of a second. So maybe 0.2 seconds. Okay. And then it glides out here. So it glides here. So I drag it where I want it to glide to. And then I go to back to my motion block and bring glide seconds to XY. Now here, you could come to change the number in your glide to either slow it down or make it faster. So when the number in your glide is higher, it makes it glide slower. Think about you and a friend moving from different locations to the office, and you being closer to the office, your friend is further away, and you are all leaving the house at the same time. Which of you is going to have to walk faster to get to the office at the same time? Obviously, the friend living farther away from the office is having to walk faster, is having to go to work faster, right? So it applies, the same thing applies here. If you wanted to, if you give it a more time, if you give it more time to move from this place to the middle, then it is going to take its time because it has like all the time in the world to get the right. But then when you give it a little bit of time, you give it smaller time to get to the same position, it will have to increase its pace to make sure it gets there at the time you've given it. So the 1 second, later on you could come and play around with the numbers here and see how it works out. And then after it has glided here, we want it to shake a bit. So it's just a matter of using the 10 degrees. So 10, you can break the 10, 15 clockwise and 10, 15 anti-clockwise, and then put a loop around it, like the repeat 10. Okay, here too you can change the number in your repeat to show like how many times it should go through that motion of turning back and forth. And make sure it's an even number. Make sure it's an even number so that it always comes back to its original position, like straight as it is. If you give it an odd number, your text will end up being crooked. That's just a heads up. And I usually say this, computers are very fast, so they can be performing more than one instruction at the same time, as so fast that the human eye cannot see. So to make sure, let's check out what I'm saying. So right now we've put the 10 degrees clockwise and anti-clockwise together in the repeat blocks. Let's see what we have so far. See, this is supposed to be turning, but we aren't seeing it because the computer is performing these two instructions so fast that we cannot see it. So we need a block to slow them down. And then that's where our wait comes in to save the day. So we put our wait block between and then we go right again. Okay. But this is quite static. Let's make it flow much more. Like let's give it a bit of flow. First, I'm going to reduce the amount of wait time to 0.5 seconds so that it doesn't wait too long. And then I'm going to bring another wait block here so that it waits in between every turn. Okay, so let's see how it's looking now. Okay. Remember, you can change the number, the degree in the 10, the 15 degree, you can increase or reduce it. You just have to play around with it to see how it is or how it turns out. And then the sound that we added, so we come to sounds and then choose a sound. Remember, when adding sounds, you add it on the sprite or backdrop you are going to be using it in the code for. So this is what I mean. We need this particular sound on the backdrop codes. So make sure that you have selected the backdrop when adding the sound. If you are going to be using the sound on a particular sprite, make sure you have selected the sprite before adding the sound. Else you would end up going into the sound code block and not finding the sound there. And the other option would be to copy it from wherever you copied it to or you added it to into the sprite you need it for, or coming back to add it. So let's take note of that. Okay, so we need like loops. Okay, we have 10 minutes more. We have 10 minutes more. I think after adding our sound, we'll pause here and then I'll share the links in the chat and then we can start putting in our questions and comments in the chat. I'll attend to them. We can start putting our questions and comments in the chat. Okay. So I think I'm going to add Bossa Nova. Bossa Nova gives me some chilling vibes here. So here I'm going to add Bossa Nova. And then because I'm going to be using a loop around my my sound block. I am not going to be putting it in this line of code. I'm going to create a new line for it. So I need another when green flag click because I need the sound to play at the beginning. But then I do not want anything to interfere with it. So I'm creating a new line for it. So when green flag clicked, it should play bossa nova until done, and it should play it for it a number of times before it ends. So I'm going to put a repeat around it, play bossa nova until done, and I think 10 is good. And I realized the communication time came in too fast, so I'm going to increase the number in my glide to maybe 3 seconds so it takes its time and comes in. Okay, and I realized that it's the sound was still playing like long after the animation was done. So you could come back and tweak it. You could either reduce the amount in the repeat here so that it plays for just a little longer after the animation has ended, or you could come and increase the number in your glide and then the number in the repeat here for the title to make it slow down further so that it's in sync. Okay. Now, this is where time will allow us to end, but that isn't the end for any of us. So, I am going to share the link to the projects in the chat so that we all have access to it way after the pro- the, the session. And can I get some feedback? What did you learn? What new thing have you learned today? Or what has been reinforced? What has been reinforced today in this session? Any suggestions for improvement? I always love such feedbacks. It helps me to improve upon what I've already done. Okay, so I'm sharing a link to the project. I just shared the link to the project in the chat. I hope you can see that. And then I'm going to share a link to my slides as well. Yes, I'm going to share a link to my slides. So the slides, as I mentioned, okay, I'm going to share my slide screen and quickly scroll through and show you what I'm talking about. So the slides actually give a step-by-step process. It typically like gives you the process you could go through to create the same project. Okay, so I'm sharing my slide presentation. My I shared the slide link in the chat as well. So see, I'm just going to quickly go through. So create three backdrops, your three backdrops: intro, instructions, and start. And then meet the sprite. So the sprite that I used, you are free to use any of the sprites, any other sprites you want to depict what we have done here. And then for all the other sprites, I actually downloaded them from online and then removed the background using remove background application found on the web. It's a very useful tool. It ensures that your sprite blends in with your backdrop that you've created. Okay, the remove background, remember that. And then the first step, you delete the cut sprite and add all the sprites. I've given the step-by-step process, and then I've given a flow of the project. So how the project flows from beginning to end, just to give you a general idea of what to expect at the end when everything is done. And then the flow of the project goes on, and then the possibilities you could use here. So it could be further developed to incorporate specific responses from the caregiver or students using the sensing blocks, ask and wait and answer. Okay, educators and caregivers can modify this. So you have all that time to go through. I have added comments and code snippets that you could use. Okay. I would also include my email address so that you could reach out to me with any comments that you may have. So I just sent my email address. You could reach out to me via my email. I'm also going to share our company website link. You could save this and then access them later. Yeah. Okay, we have a comment saying teach kids to name their sprites or backdrops or broadcast messages. Also, this is a great way to help nonverbal students learn how to communicate in their own way. My kids could make a remix project like this to make their own communication tools. That's awesome. Exactly. Okay, so going through the slides, and then we have all you have the project also included in the slide. You have the project included in the slide. And a few things I wanted to end with. So you can continue the project and add more custom conversations to make it more lively. And also, if you'd want to get the best out of this or create the best project you could possibly create, you have to adopt a playful posture, right? You have to adopt a playful posture, nothing strict here. It's all about learning and enjoying as we learn. And then be open to iterating as situations change and as you make new discoveries. You can co-create this with your students to make it even more exciting and help them learn Scratch at the same time. Mm-hmm. Any more comments on our session today? So when you also go on the last slide of our project, of our presentation, you find the link to our website, our social media pages, and I would love to connect with each and every one of you here on LinkedIn. So let me share my LinkedIn profile with those who are interested in connecting. You could, yes, and that's my LinkedIn handle as well. A moment, I think I did not copy it well. Thank you too. Thank you too for being here. Your presence has made this much more interesting. And thank you that you love this project. Thank you so much for your comments. And let me give a bit. Let me let me be a bit vulnerable here. This is my first presentation on such a large scale. I've been doing presentations with smaller groups, so I'm so happy I've been able to do this, and you've all made this possible. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and hope to connect with you all. Continue enjoying the rest of the sessions. There's so much more in store for us all, and I hope to see you all later on. Bye.